Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Amy Wilson on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Manchester, England. She's a personal trainer as well as an online coach. She's competed in Miss Universe and she's an IFBB figure competitor. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Amy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Okay.
So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired you and motivated you to make that change and adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle?
I think growing up, I'd always played sports. I'd always been into my fitness. I had horses, I had lots of hobbies and just kept really active. My dad used to be a professional football player, so I always had that. Like I'd go and I'd spend a lot of my youth at the football club. I was surrounded by like sports people. Then when I went to university, lots of takeaways, lots of going out, drinking. And I just felt terrible. You know, when you just sort of wake up in the morning and you've got no energy and you don't like how you look and you feel lethargic. So I started going to exercise classes at my local gym and just started really enjoying it. I've always been quite competitive. I like to be the best. I like to get better every time I'm doing something. So I just got steamrolled from there. Then I started venturing into the actual gym and the weight section. Started training with one of my friends who he never competed, but he was sort of a bodybuilder. And then from that, I realized I was actually I built muscle quite well, and I felt great, and I really enjoyed like the diet and the lifestyle aspect of it, and just sort of went from there. Entered my first competition, came second, got hooked. Did another one 2 weeks later, and then I got a coach and just sort of went from there.
That's awesome. And I mean, I have to clarify though, for all the people listening to the States, when she says football, she means I hate to say it, but she means soccer. I know a lot of people get offended when I say it, but for all the Americans listening, she doesn't mean our version of football. She means the world's version of football. I just have to clarify that before anyone gets any ideas. But I mean, that is a great story, and I'd love to ask also, just because it is so one of those things that I think really shocked me, and it shocks a lot of people when they get started, is that if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, I mean, there's 100 different ways as how those people in that gym got into shape. I mean, whether their nutrition, whether their diet, I mean, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. There's so many little things that then add up to the package that people end up seeing. And I always say, you know, if you were to walk up to someone and say, what did you do for that one body part of yours that looks amazing? Like, what did you do? What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you. Was that a struggle when you started out, sort of realizing what worked best for your body?
I think so. And I still don't think I know what really works best for me. But I think the thing I found works best is just being consistent. So you can do what's okay for you. But if you do that every single day, it's going to work better than finding that one exercise that's magic, that's the best for you, but only doing it twice a week. And just sort of being consistent and doing everything the best you can.
Yeah, I gotta say, because like trust me, if I found that those exercises that work the best for those body parts, I clearly, as you can probably see, I mean, I do have my winter weight on because I'm in Minnesota and it can get very, very cold, but yeah, I still am desperately trying to look for those. But how long into your journey before you finally decided that you wanted to compete? How long from just, you know, starting weight training to saying like, hey, I really want to do a show?
I think it was about 18 months. I'd been training sort of 5-6 times a week. And then somebody in my gym, there was a bodybuilding competition in my local town, and they were saying, "Oh, you're going to do it?" I was like, "No." And then I thought, "Oh, it sounds tough, but I wonder if I could." And it was sort of a challenge of it that made me sort of quite tempted to go for that.
I always say if you were to poll the general public, you would get a small singular percentage of people that would basically be willing to go up on stage and pose in a bikini in front of people. I mean, it's something that takes a lot of courage and takes a lot of determination. Did you ever, when you were, especially for your first one, did you have to feel that you ever really had to overcome that fear, or was it like a lot of the people that we have on as well, where they just say like it gets to a certain point where you work out and you're training so much that, I mean, you really just want to go on stage and show it off? What was that like for you?
No, I found it really nerve-wracking. I'd say probably the first 2 or 3 times I went on stage. I think even now I've sort of got into the routine where I just sort of adopt like some persona, and you just go on, and I would say like fake it till you make it, and go out and pretend you're confident, and it's not terrifying. But I still do get pretty nervous. I enjoy it, but it is a scary thing.
Oh, I completely see why that can be just terrifying for people because yeah, it really is just showcasing yourself to the world. You're basically become like a human art piece where you're showing off, like you said, all of those hard months upon months of hard work. But I always
Yeah.
love to ask because I mean everyone's genetics are different, so this makes this answer very, very interesting. Everyone when they get started always has that one body part that really takes off when they get started. They don't need to train as much, and then they have that one body part that sort of lags behind that they need to train to overdrive. I'll give my examples at first. I mean, for me, my back, I mean, I could train back, once a month and it would still look really, really great. But I'm also 6'3", so my legs are in lower body are just, a work in progress constantly. I mean, I don't think they'll ever be complete. It's like one of those roads that they tell you they're gonna finish in about a year, and the next thing you know, 3 years later, they're still working on it. That's me and my legs. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
When I was competing in tone figure, which I did for the Naby Universe, I did not train legs at all for 18 months. So to bring up
Lucky.
my body, yeah, so my legs were basically too big, and I had to completely cut out all my leg training. But I did a lot of gymnastics as a child, and I think that's sort of built up quite sturdy legs. And my opposite, so I really struggle still to activate my lats and my back. Um, and I've tried so many different exercises and so many different approaches. But it's still the one thing that really lags, and I'm trying to build density and trying to build that width in my back.
My number one pet peeve are those because this is by far's number one genetic thing. I think where 95% of it is genetics or calves. I was also not blessed with those calves. I mean, I always tell people, I could do 10,000 calf raises every day. I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't grow. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, that's definitely one of those things that I think really just it just baffles me how to get those. But yeah, so that's also one of mine. But I always love to say as well, just for the average public that doesn't understand really what it's like to be a bodybuilder, just getting in shape to get ready for a prep takes so much hard work and dedication in and of itself that so many people aren't able to do it. But going into a prep, that is notching things up to an extreme level. What was that process like for you? Because when you go into a prep, people don't realize you can't miss any of your workouts. Your food has got to be on point. It's got to be, eaten at the right amount of time period usually and the proper proportions. I mean, you have to weigh everything out. What was that experience like for you? Was that just a shock to your system?
See, I've always been so since I started training seriously, I kind of took on board the nutrition side. So I have prepped my foods, but I think for me it's kind of the social aspect. So when I'm prepping for a show, I generally don't have cheat meals even. So it's trying to get your family and friends to understand. And I still try and go out. So I'll still try and go out with friends and I'll just not drink, or I'll try and go out for a meal and I'll just bring my own Tupperware. But I think other people really struggle with it as well. And I think it makes other people feel quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've had times too when I was getting into shape where I'd go out, with family to like some like local restaurant like an Applebee's or something like that, and I'd be like, oh no, I'll just have the water or whatever, and then I'll wait till I get home to have my healthy food, and then you feel kind of like a sore thumb out there. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I think just really just showcases the drive and determination that a lot of these competitors have, that they're willing to do that. Because I mean, I did that a couple of times and then I was like, just out of pity, I'd be like, oh, I'll just have the breadsticks then or whatever. I'll have one thing then, this so I'm not that guy who just says, oh hey waiter, can you just get me a glass of water? So but yeah, it is super tough on so many people. But now one of the fun things that I love to talk about competing, I mean, as you can tell, I'm one of the most pale people you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, being from England, I mean, you guys don't get that much sunlight, or that's at least the stereotype that it's cloudy all the time. But that's the same here in Minnesota. I mean, I always say I'm like one of those Twilight vampires, except it's not sexy when the sunlight reflects off of me because I just have that super type of pale skin. I mean, for me, it's more like when they open the Ark in Indiana Jones and everyone's face kind of melts and they're like, oh my god, like what is that? So, I mean, I've never been tan a day in my life, so I always love to ask all of the guests that have competed in bodybuilding, what is that feeling like for you when you get that tan on? Because we hear so many people talk about, like you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that experience like for you when you get that tan?
I always go into a show, and on the morning of a show, I go, I'm not lean enough, I'm not muscly enough, like I don't feel ready. And then you get your tan on, and you're like, yeah, I look pretty good. It's like maybe I'm okay. Like it is. It's like a switch. But I think as well, it kind of comes with like the whole persona of getting on stage, and having your makeup done and your tan done and everything. And it's like you switch from one person to another, and it makes such a difference.
I always say that is the ultimate, getting a nice tan, especially for some of these, like, especially for a lot of these competitors where they just see just an absolute difference in their body. But I do have to give a warning to everyone out there. You do basically have to become a statue when you put that tan on. I mean, you can't touch anything, you can't sit down on anything. That's why I tell people, it's like, that just makes another thing where you're just looking at them and you're like, how are these people able to do it? Because I mean, like, yeah, you just basically become a statue, literally and figuratively, for the whole rest of the day. So it just adds on even more. And another thing, a lot of these things that aren't mentioned that I always love to mention is that deodorant too is another thing that you can't put on your thing. So I always tell people, you might not want to go backstage. Even if you want to go backstage and say hi to someone, you might want to wait until they leave, because you don't want to smell what dozens upon dozens of people who haven't what dozens upon dozens of people who haven't put deodorant on for a while smell like. That might not be the best thing to do. But I mean, and that's just, but it's just so incredible, that whole entire process. But probably the most surprising thing for me, and I think the most surprising thing for anyone who isn't familiar that much with bodybuilding, would be the thing that I realized when I started doing this podcast, is that for so many competitors, posing is the hardest thing for them. I mean, it's harder than their training, it's harder than their nutrition, and that's something that I don't think not that many people would realize. But what has posing been like for you? Because I always like to make the comparison. I mean, you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always something that's ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
I really enjoyed doing the toned figure posing that I used to do, and I had a really good posing coach who I worked with sort of 2 years, and she was great, and I sort of got really comfortable. And then last year I made the switch to figure, so IFBB figure, where it's completely different, and it's an eye walk as well instead of a routine without heels. So I think that I really struggle with, the walking in your heels, and obviously, so you're having to pose, you're having to walk, you're having to show off your muscles, and you're all in heels at the same time. It's hard. I think just practicing over and over and over, but equally just getting people to critique you, because I've done it before, I've practiced, but I've practiced the wrong thing. So I'm great at doing the wrong posing. But then by the time I actually got it right, it's so hard. So hard. And it hurts.
That's one thing that people don't realize too. I tell them, it's like, you get more of a work. Some of these people get more of a workout just doing the posing routine than they do during their actual workouts, because you're just getting everything to tighten. And people don't realize, I mean, you're flexing everything at the same time. I mean, when you're doing like just your average pose, people don't realize that everything in your body has to be flexed perfectly. But the hardest thing too, that a lot of people always talk about, is just making it look effortless part. Like having a smile on your face when you're just trying not to just grunt or grind your teeth to a sugar, because I mean, you're just trying so hard to make it look as professional and as sort of classy as possible, especially for the women. And like you said, the heels too. That is a ridiculous thing, where I always said, if you wanted to break the internet, have the guy bodybuilders come out in heels too, and then we'll see how easy it is for them. But what is your, out of your figure pose now, and then we'll go back to tone figure, what is your favorite pose, and what is your least favorite pose?
I really like the front relaxed pose.
Yep.
Really like front relaxed, and I think my least probably your rear pose. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like that's where I'm weakest at the moment. So, and you can't, when you're posing, when you're practicing, you can't look at yourself doing your rear pose very well. So it's always the one where you're not too sure how you look. Whereas my front relaxed, I can stand in front of the mirror, practice that over and over and over, and critique myself on that one.
See, I always say to that, whenever we hear that rear pose is someone's least favorite, the one positive that I can give you though is that that's the one time where you don't have to smile. Where you can just be like, oh my god,
I can, stomach.
Oh yeah, you can pull your stomach out a little bit. You can just be like, I can relax just a tad and just let it go for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just that posing aspect is so tough as well. But now we go to one of our fun questions as well. What is your go-to post-show meal?
I usually go for a burger. Yeah, like a really, really, really cheesy burger.
Is there any place in particular that you enjoy the most?
I love the Five Guys. It's just classic, isn't it? Yeah.
That's my answer. If I ever compete, that would be my answer too. What I would do though is I would go and I would just I would buy out a Five Guys for a night, and I would just say, okay, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna eat, and there's gonna be 3 scenarios. I'm either gonna explode, I'm either gonna puke out my guts, or I'm just gonna I'm just gonna die of, overeating. But that's what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna buy them out for the night and say, like, here's all the money that I have. Just make me as much food as I want, and just, yeah. But yeah, Five Guys, yeah, I mean, that is my cheat meal. I probably have that like once a week. So yeah, that is definitely my go-to. I mean, I absolutely love it. So yeah, Five Guys, 100%. But now, one of the more important questions that I love to ask, because it's not talked about as much on Instagram, so I always love to bring it up. People don't realize, I think, that this look that you guys bring on stage is not sustainable. Like, you're not gonna be able to look that way 365 days of the year. I think one of the biggest myths that I've had, when I talk to these guests, is I've had so many of my friends come up to me like, "Oh wow, that's amazing. I thought that these people that competed, just look that way year round and they're able to pull that off." It's like, no, that is not a look that's sustainable at all. You've manipulated your body throughout that prep to sort of have to be as dieted down and as lean as possible, and it's not sustainable. Was that a struggle for you when you were getting started, sort of figuring out like, hey, I've worked months upon months on this prep, but this look that I have, I'm not going to be able to keep? I mean, we've had so many guests come on where, I mean, they get depressed or they get a little anxious just realizing that. Was that ever a struggle for you, and how have you sort of evolved to that point where it doesn't become as much of a struggle for you?
Honestly, it's not something I really struggle with because I think I actually prefer my personal look when I am a little bit softer. I've always had, say, when I started competing, I had a really great coach who was very much like, right, okay, so you did this well at this show. You want to be better at your next show. And the only way that's going to happen is if you put on weight and you improve. So I think because I have always been really focused on being better next time, I've kind of managed to put getting softer to the back of my mind a little bit. Like I always say, I never want to be that person who gets on stage the year after and looks exactly the same or worse because they've tried to stay in stage condition and lost muscle. Plus, I really like to eat, so
That's I mean, and that's great, because we have so many stories of the opposite. But out of I say, like, my last 10 guests, I'd say probably about 7 or 8 of them have that similar answer. So I mean, I love to hear that. And plus, like I always say, it's just like starting a business. You got to spend money to make money. You got to put on fat, or you got to put on weight, I should say, if you want to put on muscle. I mean, yeah, it's like you said, if you try to maintain that look, you're gonna look the same or even worse, and then people are just gonna be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Why she showed up looking the same. So yeah, I mean, I always love to tell that. But now, at what point in your journey did you decide that you wanted to help out others and become a personal trainer?
so it's about 2 years ago. And I had people sort of asking me for help, and then I decided to go down the route and actually do my qualification. So did my personal training qualifications, my nutrition qualifications, so that I am in a position to sort of help other people. And I think for me, it's gone from like how much I've got out of having coaches, and like the two coaches I've worked with, both of them changed my life in different ways. And I think sort of having that ability to impact other people's lives in that way and make them feel good about themselves and make them feel healthier and live longer and just a better quality of life is something that I find really enjoyable.
What would you say is the number one excuse that you hear from people who don't feel that they can make that change and adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle?
They don't have time. Everyone always says don't have time. I really want to go to the gym, but I just don't have time. I really want to make my food, but I just don't have time.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've heard that. And I always say to that, I always say, I've had nurses on the show that work, 16 to 18 hour shifts at times, and they're still able to find time. It's all about your mindset. And if you were to if you were to document your life or a day in your life in like 15-minute shifts, and you were just to like write down what you did that 15 minutes as opposed to that, you would find hours worth. I don't care who you are. You would find hours worth of time where you were either on your phone or you were just doing something where you could have been working out. So, I mean, I always love to say that. But like you were talking about before, I always love to ask, because when we see these personal transformation stories online or on Instagram of people that have lost weight, you only hear the perspective from the client. You don't hear what it's like for the personal trainer. What is that feeling like for you when you do realize, like you were just talking about, that you've really helped someone, live longer or adapt a more healthy and fit lifestyle where they're a lot healthier? Does that really make everything worthwhile for you?
Yeah, you feel great. And I think get to know people really well when you work for them over a long period of time as well. So you get to know about their family life and about their job and just sort of knowing that everything's going well for them. Not just, oh, well, they look great now, but sort of seeing how it impacts on the rest of their life as well sort of really makes it sort of, yeah, seeing the whole overall package of a lifestyle change, I really enjoy.
Well, and being a personal trainer, I mean, I bet you deal with this all the time because one of the biggest stereotypes, and probably the biggest one that I love to bust on this show. I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years with Instagram, but there are still so many women that have that fear where if they pick up one weight, they're just going to put on, 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I always say, I would sign that person that very next day because they have found the secret that me and a lot of guys and a lot of women are looking for. Has that been a struggle where first of all, did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And second, I mean, being a personal trainer, I bet you hear that all the time. What do you like to respond to that whenever you hear it?
Personally, like I said, I've always loved like the look of muscular physiques, so on men and on women. I think it looks great. I love like Serena Williams sisters. I think they look amazing. So for me, I've never had that fear of looking too big. My only fear is other people's perspective of me. But equally, like when I diet down for a show, I'm in size 6 clothing. So like UK size 6 is tiny. Like muscle does not make you big. It's the fat on top of the muscle that makes you look big. And I think equally with clients, you do have people that are like, oh, I don't want to get too big. But then you think, well, it's explaining to them that growing muscle is increasing, say, your overall metabolism is increasing, like you can eat more food throughout the day. And I think getting that understanding that actually it's the fat that's making you bulky, it's not the muscle. But equally, it's kind of fashionable now to have a bit of muscle, to have like a fit physique. And women are really getting on board with that now. There's no more like size 0 trend.
I'm more of a size negative guy myself, where I prefer the size negatives, but I always make that joke. But yeah, I couldn't agree more with you that where I am happy that there is a trend where they got to you start to work out and get a little bit more with the weight training. I mean, I always love to tell the story when I was in college and getting bigger and stronger. One of my really good friends, she came up to me one night and said, you're working out and I can see that it's really working for you, and I want to go to the gym, but I'm just afraid I'm going to get too bulky. And then I told her, I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs or when we go out to get something to eat weighs more than 90% of the barbells and the dumbbells in the gym, and you are not getting an ounce of muscle from lugging that thing around 24/7. So that really convinced her, and then she went in there, and then she was like, yeah, I mean, it's really right. So I mean, I always tell people too, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to get stronger and healthier. So that, I mean, I just, if there's any myth that I wish could go out there, and like you said, it is getting a lot better. But probably for women, I think the biggest thing that impacts them so much more than it does the guys is the confidence boost that it gives you. Because so many of the guys, they walk into the gym and they act all cocky, like they already own the place, just because that's just guys being guys. But I mean, with the women, the confidence boost that it gives them is just so immense. And confidence is one of those things that I really love because it's not intangible with working out. I mean, you can take that and you could take it and transport to every other aspect of your life. Could you sort of explain how that confidence boost that you get from working out sort of transfers to every other aspect in your life?
I think particularly like getting through a contest prep. So prepping for a show is one of the hardest things I've ever done because it is just so, well, like last year I did 23 weeks. And yeah, when you've done 23 weeks of having that discipline and having that structure, and you have those horrible days, but you get through it and the next day's better. And I think that sort of that belief that you can get through really tough things that's what I sort of applied to the rest of my life. So you're having a really terrible day, but you go, well, you know what, I've got through worse than this and everything's been okay. So you can kind of it's having like that optimistic outlook where you go, well, things have been terrible before and they've always got better. And like that's the sort of I guess that's what I take from it more than the confidence is that sort of ethos that everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, like I said, if you've went through something that intense, you're gonna look at a lot of other things in life, and you're gonna say like, "What am I to be scared for that, or what am I to be worried about that?" I mean, it's like I've competed for a bodybuilding show. I mean, I can guarantee if that happened to me, I'd be like, "Okay, oh, a couple of days where I might have to eat as much. Oh, that's fine." It's like I
Yeah.
did that. I did that for 23 weeks, so But I mean, another huge misconception that I think personal trainers deal with a lot that I love to discuss on the show too is I mean, a lot of people just don't realize when you are getting in shape and when you are putting on muscle, you're going to need to eat a lot more than you normally ate even before you started working out. I mean, there's so many people that I've had come on who, they're like at 250 pounds. And then when they lose, about almost 100 of it, they still say, at 150 pounds, I'm eating more than I ate when I was at 250. I mean, it's really something that a lot of people don't understand. Is that hard for you to sometimes get your clients to believe that? Because a lot of the times, I mean, if you were to tell me that, I'd be like, and I was at that, if I was at that point in my life, I'd be like, there's no way that I need to eat more when I've lost all this weight. I was like, you're talking crazy. Has that ever been a struggle for you, sort of convincing them that, yeah, you kind of do?
Yeah, see, I've actually had two situations this week with young girls that I do online coaching for. And because I used to be a teacher, so I used to be a primary school teacher. And so one thing I think I enjoy about online coaching is sort of educating people about their nutrition, about their training. But no, and I had a girl who messaged me this morning and she was saying, well, I got up early today and I went straight to the gym and I didn't eat my pre-workout meal. And she said, and I got halfway through and I felt awful. And I was like, why didn't you have your pre-workout meal? And she's got this like, so she's got this weight barrier in her head, but she's like, I really want to get under this weight. And I thought if I didn't eat first, then that might help me to lose more weight this week. And I think sort of we had the conversation, well, actually, if you're not fueled, you're going to be expending less energy during the session. So actually, you're probably going to be in less of a calorie deficit because you're not burning as much, you're not expending as much energy. So you've not got a fuel to fuel your workout. So actually, you're lacking off in that sense anyway. And I think once we'd had that conversation, she was like, oh yeah, like that does make sense. And I had another girl who her food plan, she's going, well, is this meal only if I'm hungry at night? It's like, well, no, you need to eat that because it's getting your body used to having the food, getting your body so it's got enough energy to push through your workouts. And I think just sort of getting girls particularly to understand it's fuel for your body, it's fuel for your training sessions, and you're not going to be able to perform unless you eat enough. And sort of I feel like when people make that switch, it kind of really changes your view on food and about how much you really need.
Couldn't agree more because, and like you said, it's a lot of it's with women because I mean, if you tell a guy that he can eat whatever he wants, I mean, he's already stuffed his food by the time you finish that sentence. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I really found out that I mean, I enjoyed immensely just because it is, I mean, like you, I also really enjoy to and love to eat. But now, I mean, being in England, it can get cold, during the winters. You guys can have some chilly winters. I mean, maybe not as bad as it is here, but it still can get reasonably cold. What are some ways that you use to still be able to motivate yourself and your clients to still get that workout in during the winter? Because I mean, for me at least, when it gets cold outside, I mean, your body's just basically telling you like, hey, let's just relax, let's just take a rest, stay inside, watch some Netflix, just relax. But what are some ways that you sort of tell yourself like, hey, I need to get this workout in because I'm not going to be able to maintain this look then?
I would just say just to focus on how good you're going to feel after your session. Because personally, I get a lot of endorphins. I got great feelings. So when I've trained, my entire mood is lifted. If I don't train for a week, I feel it. I don't feel as energetic. I feel sort of demotivated. I can't be bothered. So for me, it's always like focusing on that feeling afterwards. And even if you're just so you get one lift in that session where you've improved on last week, you're getting better today. You've done something today. You've sort of achieved something. So just sort of focusing on those positives that you're gonna get from the session, as opposed to how crappy and guilty you'll feel if you just stay on the sofa and eat your Domino's instead.
Yeah, yep. And I think everyone's experienced that once in a while. So yeah, I've definitely had that feeling. But I don't think we touched based on it before. So what really motivated you to make the change and go all the way into figure, other from figure tone? Were they just saying you were just getting too big for it, or what was the story behind that?
So when I started doing figure in England, like I did NABA and PCA, and sort of the peak of it is the NABA universe. And I'd sort of looked up to the girls that had won the NABA universe, and that was like my end goal. And I thought, oh, I'd love to do that one year. I qualified for the NABA universe, and I won it. And I wasn't ever expecting it. So for me, it was kind of like I've kind of peaked, and I didn't want to go back and do it again because I thought, well, I'm not improving, I'm not progressing if I'm just sort of holding this look and sort of winning it again, or worse, like not winning it next time. So it was kind of like, where do you go next with it? And I've always loved like the Olympia figure girl look, like it's insane. And I've always loved sort of like the more muscular look. So I decided that I was actually gonna have, so I had 2 years between competing. I decided I was going to focus on growing and sort of yeah, just getting some gains.
Were you excited that you finally got to train legs?
Yes. I think
Oh,
it's true now.
yeah. So how did your training differ? I mean, because like you said, for people that don't know, I mean, when you're going into figure, you're putting on a little bit more muscle. I mean, it's a lot more of a leaner, more muscular look. Did your training and nutrition at all differ, or were you just able to do stuff that you weren't able to do when you were training, when you were doing figure toned?
So I completely changed my training. So when I was doing figure toned, I was doing just like glutes, a lot of glute focused training. I was doing really high reps, so sort of 15 to 20 reps, because I didn't need to gain a lot more size. I needed to just sort of define and sort of work on what was already there. And then I went on to a big bulk. So I started, my calories I think I got up to like 3,800 calories a day this time last year when I was like really bulking and going on size. I cut down the volume of my session, so I was doing less work within a session and really going to failure, which is something I never really trained to failure before. Also, started doing legs a lot, and just more compound lifts as well. I really enjoyed like the complete change in my training.
Oh yeah, and it's always nice to mix it up because I have all the positives to say about training, but sometimes let's be honest, it can get boring if you're doing the same things, over and over. So it is definitely nice to mix it up and just because and plus with the body too. I mean, you're going to need to change things up, otherwise, you get fatigued. I mean, it's just your body just gets so used to those movements. But now two of the questions that I love to ask all of our health and fitness people that I have on this podcast. So for the first one, I mean, for me, when I started getting into shape in college and getting bigger and stronger, there were so many positive things. But one of the negative things is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next couple of months before I move out, and every time that they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and bring the groceries in. Has that been a similar experience with you, where people? I mean, not when you're like in a sweater like you are now, or a sweater like me because it's cold outside, but on days when you have to wear like go sleeveless or you have to do anything else. Have you found that people then just take one look at you and just think that you can do favors like that for them?
To be honest, not really. I think because I'm a girl, people will tend to assume you're not as strong still. Yeah, no, but I think like when you do have your body out, people's reactions sort of do change to you. I've noticed it, particularly if I go out sort of like to a nightclub and things, and you get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of remarks, get a lot of positive remarks, but you also do get one or two people like, "Whoa, she's like massive," or "She's hench," or
Or you
"Got
get
bigger
a
muscles."
or you get a lot of arm wrestling requests too.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're like, "Oh, you've got bigger muscles than me." It's like, "Oh yeah,"
Well,
like
yeah, duh. Yeah.
I do.
You show me be like I'd be insulted if I didn't. Like
Yeah,
so
exactly.
well, and that's why I love to have guests come on and share their stories because there still is that stigma. I mean, with bodybuilders in general, but a lot with the females too, where if people see someone with a lot of muscles walking down the street, they're not able to look past the muscles and see that like they're just a normal person deep down behind it who has their own story. They just like you said. You're kind of like an art exhibit kind of to them then where you're just like, oh, that's different, like I haven't seen that before. So I love to have them come on and share their stories because for so many people they're not able to look past the muscles and just say like, oh, there's an average person just like everyone else. They might just work out a little bit more and be super dedicated, more dedicated than the general population when it comes to being healthy and fit. But yeah, I mean, but with the moving furniture thing, I mean, can I be honest? You have the best of both worlds because, like you said, you can have the look and then not have to get asked for it. But me being as tall as like I said, I'm 6'3", so being that tall, it's a double-edged sword because even if I wasn't any muscular at all, if I had zero muscle, they'd still ask me because I'm tall. So I mean, every other weekend last summer, I'd have friends text me and just be like, "Oh, hey, you want to come help me move? I'll take you out to eat afterwards." And I mean, that was their bait and switch where I mean they got me in. I mean, I was hooked. But I even told them, I said, hey, as long as it happens after I get my workout in, because I'm not gonna do your stuff beforewards and then get too sore where I won't be able to lift. So yeah, it's just it's nice it also shows that people realize that that you are working out and stuff. But yeah, it's one of those things where it did take me a while to get adjusted to because like you said, you do. I mean, people look at you all the time. I mean, I can even remember sometimes in clubs, girls would come up and start feeling my arms without even asking, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, Becky, come and check this guy out." I mean, I was a lot bigger than I am now. I've lost about like 15 pounds of it, but still, yeah. I mean, I just remember what that felt like, where it took just a while to just realize that you are being displayed to everyone basically, or that's at least what they think. So yeah, it definitely is a struggle. But now my favorite question to ask, and this is a multi-million-dollar idea for anyone out there before I ask it. When it comes to clothes for fit women, I always love to say, and fit guys have their own problems that I ask when they come on, but for fit women especially, I mean, your clothing options can be severely limited. I always love to say, if you have big broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. You're not gonna fit in that many of them. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, where I mean, jeans are not built for bodybuilders, guys or girls. And like you were talking about too, like when you get toned down, you're going to like a size 6, and you're not gonna be like that so you have to have basically 2 different types of wardrobes for when you're getting lean down and when you're getting bulky. But what are some other ways that you've found that really have helped you sort of compensate for the fact that your clothing options are going to be severely limited because of just how your body changes constantly?
See, I'm quite lucky now, but I do work as a personal trainer. So, like, this is a men's hoodie. If I'm wearing sleeves, I cannot fit in women's tops, or they're just absolutely massive around my waist and my stomach. So I tend to go for like men's or like unisex jumpers. Lycra. Lycra is always the way forward. Stretchy jeans, because I've got really big calves as well. I can't wear high boots. So I remember I used to have to, so if I wanted to wear Wellington boots, I used to have to cut the top of the Wellington boots to make them bigger.
She's one of those genetically best people, I guess. I mean, we're not. I had one guest. It was funny when I asked that question about like what was one body part that really took off you, and she put her calf up on the table, and I was like, okay, that calf is bigger than my thighs. I was like, we're done here. I'm done with this. This is BS. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I always, yeah, and that is so interesting, like the clothing changes that people have to make. And I always love to tell the story when I came back from college, my freshman year, I'd put on about 15 pounds of muscle. Went to a friend's wedding. I bent down. I heard a zzz. Now, luckily, it was the shirt inside the suit. It wasn't the suit itself. So I lucked out really bad on that one. But it was one of those moments where I realized, like, hey, yeah, I might need to upgrade my wardrobe a little bit. But now we go to our audience favorite, my personal favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire where we're going to ask Amy here about a dozen or so questions that I ask all of our health and fitness guests. And we're going to see how her answers stack up to everyone else that we've had on the show. So for our first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
Ooh. Oh, I don't know. Oh, this is a tough one. I wasn't prepared for this. I quite like a bit of Nile Rodgers and Chic. Yeah, Le Freak. A bit of like an 80s groove kind of vibe.
That is the same exact for me too. I mean, I gotta have my old school 80s cheesy music. It's that is by far my thing. I have a problem though, so like I have a gym at home, and I mean, I get to work out, 75% of the time at there. But when I do go to a normal gym, I mean, I'm one of those people where I got to wait for the beat to drop. So let's say I'm doing like a lat pull down, I might be like this for like 30 seconds waiting for the beat to drop. So I've had people come up to me and just be like, hey, are you all right? Did you like pull out your back or something? And I just tell them, I was like, oh, nope, just waiting for the beat to drop. So yeah, I am known throughout my gym as the guy who waits for the beat to drop. So yeah, it's definitely something that I've had to definitely work on. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could work out with any celebrity, who would it be?
The Rock.
Mm-hmm. 90% of our answers have been him, and I can completely understand why. For me, I'd choose more of like an Arnold just because it's Arnold, and I'd love to hear him yell at me in his Austrian accent because it's hilarious just to hear him talk. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train any celebrity, who would it be?
Oh, who would I choose? Maybe like Zac Efron or someone. I feel like he'd just be fun. I feel like you'd have a good laugh with him.
Be honest, you'd be staring at him the entire time.
Fitness professional, of course not.
Oh, come on. It's Zac Efron, yeah. I mean, yeah, but Zac Efron, yeah, he would be, yeah, I think he'd be a very good one to train. For me personally, yeah, I have no idea who I would do, but yeah, Zac Efron, that is actually the first time that we've heard Zac Efron, so he's on the board now for the first. Normally we get like comedians, but I always say to that, if like you're going to do a comedian, you're not going to get a workout in, you're going to get the best ab workout of all time, but I mean, that's about as good as you're going to get, yeah.
You need someone that kind of is into the training, so they quite go along with it, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So now, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Chicken.
Yep. And yep, we heard that. That is our most popular answer. Close behind that is egg whites, but the most surprising answer, the answer that has shocked me the most, is mustard. I would have never guessed in a million years that anyone would ever answer that, but it's because, it's 0 in calories, it's 0 in fat. So a lot of these bodybuilders that we have on, I mean, they just douse their chicken and they douse whatever else they're eating in mustard to give it a little bit of flavor. But I always say to that, you might want to reevaluate your life if you're doing that, because that's just, I used to be a mustard guy, but now, I'm team ketchup all the way. And if they ever made a ketchup that's as beneficial for you as mustard is, I would completely understand that then. But now, out of all your followers that you have on Instagram, what would be one thing that you think they'd be surprised to know about you if they met you in person?
I hate like walking. I hate cardio. I'm really lazy. So yeah,
Yet you decided to become a bodybuilder.
Yeah. I love weight training. Yeah. I hate walking. If I can get a taxi, if I can get an Uber, if I can drive. So my gym is like a 20-minute walk. I usually drive to the gym.
Okay, so I mean, me being an American, I mean that just sounds sensible because here everyone has a car. So I mean, yeah, it's like, well, duh, of course you drive. You don't want to. Who wants to walk anywhere? But how do you deal with getting that lean? Then do you still do the proper amounts of cardio, or do you try to find other ways to not have to do as much cardio?
I've done it both ways. So I've done 2 hours a day of cardio, or I've done 25 minutes of cardio a day, and just ate less. I think my physique looks better when I do more cardio. But I've sort of tried to do it both ways. I'd rather be hungry than tired from cardio, personally.
Yeah. I mean, some of the guests that we've had on here have been, like ex-marathon runners, or they still are marathon runners, and I just tell them, I was like, how are you, like, what, like, why? Yeah, that's what I said that too. I was like, why? I'm one of those people where you, like, kind of like you, though. If I were to go on for, let's say, 25 minutes, I just get bored because it's like, what am I doing? It's just like, you're just running.
I think as well, it's a time management. It's trying to find 2 hours in your day.
That too,
to eat less food, prep less food, buy less food, and try and do less cardio. And I've got more time that way.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point too. I mean, not that many people have that much time in it to do it that in of itself. So yeah, I think that would definitely be something that most people would not realize is that, I mean, when they take one look at you, they just assume probably that, oh, she's probably a cardio bunny when it comes to, getting that lean. But that is not the case. But now, if you had the all-knowing power, what would be one thing that you'd want to see change about the sport of bodybuilding if you had the all-knowing power to change one thing about it?
I think making women's bodybuilding equal to men's bodybuilding.
Yep.
I think in now, the women's pulls in probably more people watching it. It probably pulls in more interest, more competitors. But men's bodybuilding has still got so many benefits over women's. Like there's certain federations where only men can be pros. The pro shows still, like, the money is a lot higher for the men's classes. And I just don't think it's not equal, which in this day and age just seems madness.
Well, and that is obviously my number one choice as well, because I've heard so many times of stories like that too, and I agree with you 100%. Where, let's be honest, not that many straight guys are going to go to a men's bodybuilding show and to look at guys' body. I mean, it's just not a thing. So especially with women too. I mean, you do have more drawing power, and even if you look at social media and you look at how many followers these women have as opposed to the men, I mean, it just shows you how much more popular that can be. So yeah, I honestly do believe that the women should be paid more than the men when it comes to bodybuilding, just because they draw a lot more. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, and that would be one thing that I'd want to see change as well. But one thing for me too is, like, all these different federations. I was like, if they could just put it down to like one federation, then like everyone would do. But then they have all these people who are like, oh, there's different posing for different federations. What's like, just if they could just figure it out where like one thing would just control everything, I think that would make things so much easier. But now for our last question, the questionnaire: if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Just don't care what other people think, and just do what makes you happy. I think at that age, I spent all my time worrying about like fitting in and making friends and being cool. And you spend so much energy on things that have no relevance to your life and your future.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. That would be my answer as well. So now we're done with the questionnaire, and I like to ask these two final questions to each of our guests before we wrap things up. So, what is your plan right now for this current year? Do you have any plans of competing, or do you have any plans of what you're going to be doing? I mean, with your personal training. If we were to talk to you a year from now, where do you think you would like to be at with your career?
So career-wise, I'm starting a new role actually on Monday, um, at like a body transformation gym in Manchester. So I want to do really well there and progress and just help a lot of people to make big changes in their lives. Competing wise, I am aiming to compete again in September, October this year. So I've sort of mapped out my year and I'm looking to start my dieting phase sort of around May. But obviously it all depends on how I'm looking, if I think I've improved enough. And yeah, um, so hopefully this time next year, I would love to have an IFBB Pro card. That is my goal. Um, but only if I'm good enough to be a good pro. I don't want to be chasing a card just to say I've got one. I want to be able to hold and to compete at that level and do well.
Well, and I gotta say, for anyone out there, I mean, if you go and follow her on Instagram, which I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below, and take a look at some of her photos, she's gonna get her pro card. I mean, yeah, she's just looking at some of her photos, you're gonna be inspired to get off the couch and stop eating those Twinkies and get to the gym. So we wish you nothing but the best of that. I mean, I don't know how I would deal with going through prep during the summer when I that's when I love to eat the most. But that, so best of luck to you on that. But yeah, career wise, and also we wish you nothing but the best in that new job. But now, lastly, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to?
Oh, my little friend Rosie. So me and Rosie, we do a YouTube, but we've just started this year.
I'll leave a link
so
to that down below as well.
and give a link to that. So Rosie is someone I've literally met over social media, and she's just had an operation to have part of her bowel removed. And we sort of got in touch because I had a bout of encephalitis 2 years ago that left me really unwell, and it was sort of getting back into fitness. And she's been through the same thing. So we've sort of developed a really close friendship through that. So hey.
I'll leave a link to their YouTube channel down below. I highly recommend everyone go and check that out. And again, you guys, Amy Wilson, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. I mean, it was so great talking to you, hearing their story, and plus having our international guests come on. I really enjoy that as well. So everyone, go and give her a follow down below. I'll leave a link to all of her stuff. I highly, highly recommend it. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.